microphones are on.
Okay. All right. Good.
Anybody here from Minnesota?
Yes, he will be here around 8. He's stuck on a broken down bus coming back from New York City.
Not too uncommon.
Nice.
Okay, we ready?
Yes.
All right. All right, good evening. This is the, yeah, is it on? No, it's not on. Okay, good evening. This is the Village of New Paltz Planning Board meeting, Thursday, November the 9th, 2017. And we have, starting with a public hearing for PB 1728. This is a proposal for a one-lot subdivision at 58 Elting Avenue that would create a new lot, 56 Elting, and a site plan for the construction of a two-car garage with a one-bedroom residence above it.
Point of order.
Yes, sir.
Could you explain to us the difference, the distinction between the public hearing and the public comments?
Yes.
So we know when-
Of course. So public hearings are required by our code for every application that we look at, and so those are specific times set aside for people to talk about that specific application. We also allow at every meeting up to 15 minutes of public comment. People are free to talk about any of the items that are either on our agenda or not, so that's much broader. So this is specifically a public hearing. Do I have a motion to open the public hearing?
So moved. Second.
We should note for
That I've recused
purposes of
myself
the public
from-
hearing that Rich Steffens is recusing himself.
Right.
All right. Is there anybody here who would like to speak at the public hearing about this application? Would you mind coming? Is there a microphone?
No, I'll put a microphone up here.
Thank you.
That's okay. Can you hear me?
The only reason we asked you to go
Yeah, they
there
wanna get
is
it for the record.
for the television.
Oh,
Thank you, since we're broadcasting and recording. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Okay, Misha Harnick, she was unable to come today,
Yes.
but she wanted me to read her abbreviated letter. She already submitted a letter
Okay.
to the planning board.
Thank you.
She lives at 57 Elting Avenue, across the street from Mr. Steffens' house. Okay, so when a similar proposal was presented in late 2013, street residents were strongly opposed to it. In fact, we were strongly opposed to the house that eventually did get erected on the slope side of the original house. That house, after 3 years, still seems not to be fully completed, judging from the exposed large part of the foundation and lack of adequate landscaping. This current proposed structure also appears to be very closely abutting the existing house on 56 Elting Avenue. From the submitted drawing, it appears that the garage doors would face the existing house, and it seems to me unrealistic to have a driveway wide enough to allow the car to make a 90-degree turn to ease into the garage. And her other concern was that there were several trees on the site, and it would be extremely upsetting if more trees were to be cut down to accommodate this venture. But you could say that the trees would be preserved. How could the trees be preserved when there's going to be large equipment and chunks of material positioned and delivered up that slope? In addition, there is an odd-looking step-like slab of concrete. It's sort of in the middle of the existing driveway near the existing garage door. and it will surely have to be removed to accommodate the driveway extension, hopefully not by blasting. And should a one-bedroom residence with a two-car garage be allowed to be built, it should include a clause requiring dark-colored interior to blend with the trees. And this high-density property will likely decrease our property values. And lastly, if the planning board had examined the 58 Elting Avenue prior to approval, it probably would have not been allowed at all or requested modifications to its size and color. Thank you for your attention and consideration.
Thank you for reading
Can I
that.
have your name? I'm sorry.
Oh, my name is Elizabeth Lee. I live at 21 Tricor, behind Mr. Steffens' property.
Okay, thank you, Elizabeth.
Yes.
Is there a copy of the site plan that we can see?
I've got one here.
Sure. There you go.
No, wait, here.
In the meantime, is there anybody else who would like to speak on the public hearing for this application, PB 1728? Yeah, I figured you might want to say something. Thanks for now. Well, that would be my fault because I did this. No, she did that. It's usually Tuesday. Thanks, Matt. Appreciate it. I'll tell you the story later. Okay. Are you interested in speaking?
The only thing I would say is that
Could you, if you wish to, please speak into the microphone? Thanks.
my name is Willie Yee, Y-E-E. I live at 21 Tricor Avenue. The only thing I see, this subdivision is going to be the smallest lot on the street as far as I can see, but maybe not. But it definitely looks crowded to me. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anybody else who wants to speak at this public hearing? And a motion to close the public hearing?
So moved.
Do I have a second? All in favor? Aye. Thank you. All right, do we have a public comment sheet? Oh, sorry, Christina. Thank you. So, it's fine.
Thanks.
So I'm assuming that you've spoken? Yes. Okay, thank you. Yes. So we have a couple of people who wish to speak at public comment. Kara Lee first.
Hello, my name is Kara Lee. I live at 135 Huguenot Street. My neighbor, Brad Barkley, submitted some comments on aspects of the Zero Place proposal. He wasn't able to come tonight and asked if I would just summarize his comments and with the request that you take them up at the next meeting. Three things that he wanted to raise. He continues to be concerned that the safety issues having to do with the handicapped parking spaces on Mulberry Street haven't been resolved, and his concern is about the conflict between bicycle bicyclists on Mulberry Street and the handicap parking. And his concern is about the need for cyclists to cross, the cars will be crossing the bike lane to get into those parking spaces. And he believes that there are alternatives for the handicap parking that haven't been adequately looked at. He's provided more details in the letter that he submitted 2 days ago. He also wanted to raise the concern about, I think, a very recent modification, which is the elimination of bike lanes on Route 32 and Mulberry in response to the Department of Transportation comments, and concern about the reduced safety for cyclists with shoulders rather than actual bike lanes. And the third issue he asked me to raise on his behalf is concern about the lack of conditions on the use of the roof deck if it's available for either residents or non-residents for scheduled events. So he has raised a number of questions about how that should be regulated. For myself, I also have submitted a question, which I'll just share with you right now. It's my understanding that the site plan includes access to the rail trail from the back entrance of Zero Place. Given the proximity to the rail trail entrance at Mulberry Street, it's not really necessary to provide an access point directly from the building to the rail trail. People use the rail trail in order to avoid being in a commercial area, and redundant access points will perforate and diminish the natural quality of the rail trail, which is enjoyed by the general public. Further, Alta has suggested that this access point should be lit for pedestrians when in fact we all know that the rail trail closes at dusk. Excuse me. When Tom Nyquist and I met with David Shepler and walked the area, he acknowledged he hadn't heard this point of view before and seemed to be in some agreement that perhaps access from the back of the building was redundant. So given that the visual impacts of the proximity of the building to the rail trail will already be significant, I don't believe it should be compounded by creating an additional access point directly from the building. The additional access is unnecessary since the building is only a few steps from the Mulberry Street entrance to the rail trail. So I would be interested in knowing if the planning board has already addressed this question in the process of the site plan review and whether you will consider eliminating access from the back of the Zero Place building to the rail trail.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Excuse me, just may I ask a question? The rear access, you're talking about the one that as you're looking at the property from the road would be at the far right hand,
No.
No, behind the building, the back
the one that's directly behind it?
Yeah.
Okay.
So
Got it.
where the building faces the rail trail.
Right,
there
right.
is sort of a pre-existing little
Right, yeah.
rampway. And
Yeah.
I think the site plan envisions having an access point to the back door of the building to the rail trail at that point.
Okay, thank you.
Right here on the left side.
Yeah, just trying to figure out which one.
Tom
you want.
Nyquist.
Tom Nyquist, 140 Hilltop Street. My wife and I sold our house on South Chestnut in the year 2000 after living there for 30-plus years. We did so to escape the noise generated by residential houses on 3 sides of us that eventually were converted into student residences. Landlords promised to maintain order. They didn't. The police were called again and again over the years to little avail. We learned several things over those 30-plus years. 1, noise carries a surprising distance. 2, noise degrades your life and your property. 3, that calling the police is no answer, for it simply ends the problem temporarily, sometimes for as little as 15 minutes. Fourth, that landlords come and go, as do the promises they make. Corinne and I have been fortunate for the 17 years we've lived on Huguenot Street. We've had good neighbors and the peace and quiet of a good neighborhood. Now we face the prospect, among other things, of what is euphemistically called a roof deck. Our property is immediately across the rail trail from what will become the Zero Place. So I ask the rhetorical question: who do we call the first time there is a noise problem? The landlord, if his or her number is available, the police, the building inspector, the mayor or a trustee, or a member of the planning board? Or do we think about moving again? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, we have 6 applications this evening that we need to address. The first one is PB 1702. This is 85 North Chestnut Street. So if you guys would like to come up. And again, we don't have the boundary mic up, eh? No. Okay. So if there's a way we could share a microphone with these guys, that would be helpful. Hi, Andy, thanks for coming. Sure. Roddy, nice to see you. Okay, so as we discussed at the last meeting, the situation with this application is that Roddy would like to be able to put his auto repair shop in to the existing building, and then once the zoning for the NBR district, or at least for this section of the district, has been worked out, submit an application that would be compliant with and meet the spirit of what the NBR district is being considered to be. So it would be a mixed-use building, and the site would be further improved. So the situation is that we're, to the extent that we can't provide a temporary, as we found out last time, we can't offer you a temporary use for the property and then, just wait until everything gets settled. So we have to treat this as 2 separate applications, and so we need to look at this application for the repair shop, and we're going to need a site plan that will be consistent with the current zoning. But in conversations with Andy, I believe that, and from what I've heard from discussions at the village board, that the issues around dimensional requirements, such as the need for sidewalks, the distances around the setbacks and stuff, probably aren't going to change very much between the two. And I sent you the red line copy, so you have that to work with. So you can design this, with that information available to you. But what we need to do is get a site plan application from you that will include a full actual site plan drawings. We need to, I think there's no way around it. We'll have to involve the DOT in deciding where your curb cut's going to go and make sure they get approved, they can sign off on that and other issues that involve their right-of-way. But we have the building inspector here tonight. We have our attorney here tonight who both discussed this. And so what seems to be the case is that with that application, and after the review by this board, if it gets approved by this board, then you can proceed, you can do the renovations to your building, you can ask for a temporary certificate of occupancy that would enable you to move into the building with up to 9 months before, and this is the part where I'm a little unclear where, Brian, if you want to come up, you could maybe help out here, but you would have a 9-month window in which you could operate before you have to, what, have the site plan completed, or what would be the?
Issue a temporary conditional certificate of occupancy while the site is being prepared in accordance with the approved site plan.
Okay.
So that way you can operate your business while you're getting everything else together. I can only do that for a maximum of 9 months before we have to get another approval for a conditional certificate of occupancy.
And if in the meantime, Roddy submits a new application for a, whatever, a 2-story building and so forth, because the zoning has gotten, been voted on and changed, how does that play into the process?
So later on, when Roddy submits, or if he submits a second application down the road, whatever the code happens to be at that time, that's the code you'll have to meet.
But he can continue to operate his business under the temporary C of O while that application is being reviewed?
Yes.
Okay.
Up to the 9 months.
Up to the, right, during the 9-month
Do we
term.
have to extend it, or?
Yeah, if it's going to be extended again, I'll have to come back to you guys and ask for permission to extend it for up to another 9 months maximum.
Okay. So, why don't you, I know you had some thoughts and questions.
Yeah, I had some thoughts on,
Take that mic, thanks.
it just seemed kind of complicated to try to show improvements that we didn't design yet for the future development.
Right.
I thought maybe a better way to simplify it, if it's truly 2 separate projects, is to treat the first part as just what it is. It's a change of use from retail to auto, and complying with the special use requirements for auto, and just treat it just as that. It's an existing site. It's all pre-existing, non-conforming. There's no improvements proposed to the site. So it would just simply be change of use, comply and addressing anything that's changed, which is a change to auto. Does it meet the parking? Does it meet the whatever auto needs?
Right, the special use.
And that way it separates it, it gets him in there, and then the other process can kind of go at its own pace without these timelines.
So, Brian, did you hear this?
No, I didn't.
Okay. So why don't you pull a chair up and sit?
But isn't that what you said in the beginning, Michael? This is really going to be a 2-step process. The first process will be putting the garage.
Right.
The second process will be if he decides to add second
Right.
story.
Right. Yeah, but the problem seems to be, go ahead.
Well, I just wanted to be clear that it's not, in order to avoid illegal segmentation with respect to seeker. This isn't really one project that's being split into 2, because we don't know at all what that second one might be. It's what he intends he might do, but he has to see what the new law is when those regulations, and then conform to that. So it's really not presently a 2-step process. It's something that he may turn into a 2-step process, but right now, all you have before you is this, now the way it's been described, a change in use without any modifications to the site, although that's different from what's been before us, where there have been garage doors that are being changed on the site.
Right.
But
Yes, that's, I consider that right, they're adding doors, but there's no site modifications.
okay, but you're adding doors, so and the change in use both trigger the site plan, and then the board has to look at other issues with respect to site plan, landscaping, parking, all the things that you're required to do under site plan, which can be, the completion of which can be done through conditions and dates of which they can be done that would fit into what Bryant was talking about before with the temporary CO and time to go ahead and comply with those conditions. But I just wanted to make it clear on the record that it's not one project that's being done in 2 steps for seeker purposes. It is a likely second step, but right now you don't know that a second step would even happen depending upon what the regulations come into effect, and you don't know what those regulations are.
So it's really a seeker issue, you're saying, not
Well, there are several issues, but one of which is a seeker issue, and if in fact this was really two steps in the same project, you'd have to study both of those at the same time. But although you think that what you want is this multi-use at the end of the day, you don't have any plan for that right now, and the plan that may come about is totally dependent upon new zoning, and you don't know the contours of the new zoning. So you can't definitively say, oh, this is what I'm going to be doing at this point in time.
Right.
So because of that, I don't want it to be thought of as truly a two-step process before this board presently. You know, it's that your possibility of having a different project in the future may affect how this board will allow some conditions in the resolution, but other than that, it has really no effect on it whatsoever.
So, having heard this a couple of times or more now, I don't see any way around the actual creation of a site plan for this project. The flexibility seems to be in allowing the business to go in and open up while the site improvements still, are in the future, and how the board decides to frame that exactly remains to be seen, but we understand that we have we can provide a 9-month window, which would begin, actually when you're ready to get your CO. So that's some period of time after, you get your permit, which is some period of time after now. So I just don't, I don't see a shortcut through the site plan review process and designing the site plan itself.
Okay. Well, the challenge on my end on that is that, just kind of throwing some landscaping and sidewalks on the plan. It's a process. If we show an entrance on the plan, that has to go through DOT, and that's going to be a process. And they may want it here, and they're not fast, and they might want to see some traffic numbers, and so this is, and figuring out how the whole site's going to lay out, where the parking's going to go, it's not a simple task at all to throw something on, to put something on there that's accurate, that we think is really going to get developed as part of the second phase. So you're almost designing the whole second phase. You're almost going through that process to.
You can't design it in terms of the second phase. You've got to design it for what's there today and what the site plan for today calls for. You can't design for what he may do in the future or what the zone may allow in the future. You've got to design for the fact that he's taking the current retail automotive shop and turning it into a repair shop. And what would be necessary to make that site work as a repair shop?
If we offer the 9 months window to work with it.
You can't do anything on that property until the site plan is approved. You can't put in the garage doors, you can't get a building permit. Am I correct? Yeah, correct. So you can't touch the property until the site plan is approved. That's what we need, is a site plan. And the site plan will be for the repair shop. Not for what the future might be.
You have more experience with DOT, for example, and they are an additional regulatory body who has to provide their input. The experiences we've had have been pretty good with them over the last few applications in terms of their responsiveness to emails, right? And the thoroughness with which they've, their willingness to set up, to be available for meetings if necessary, which may not be the case here. I don't think they're going to require you to do traffic numbers. We have fairly current traffic data about this section of road, and so if that's an issue, and this is a relatively low impact use for the auto repair, I don't think that'll be a major impediment, but obviously I can't promise what will happen from them. But
my experience lately now is it's been slow.
Okay.
3 or 4 weeks to get an answer on things.
Yeah, that hasn't been our experience.
There has
Maybe
been a
it's just-
transition, I think, in one of the staff in the regional office up in Kingston. So I believe David Corrigan has a new assistant helping them, but I agree they have been responsible.
Okay.
Yeah, there's been a change, there's some
David, can I
changes.
ask David a question? David, what do you see in terms of DOT? Are they going to be involved with the curb cuts to this property? That's going to be their involvement?
The NBR district standards provide for, I believe the NBR standards speak to that topic, and moreover, there's a county referral standard that there is, one of the aspects of their review is that there is channelized access. We already have referred it to the county. We're waiting for comments on the required modification from them, but I think you've made a statement that you can't design the site for the future if you don't know the full program for the future, but it does seem that the transportation form in terms of the NBR district prescribes sidewalks and management of curb cuts and streetscapes. So those may be topics that you can start to lay down the form, and as you get the temporary use set up, you're thinking about the future arrangement of the site and how you might be able to temporarily phase in aspects of the development.
So the idea would be that he didn't build these improvements. He was in there on a temporary CO. They're designed and subject to him continuing a process for this other development. Or is he physically if I have sidewalks all the way up and down an entrance, are we putting all that stuff in before he moves in?
Okay.
No, I think you said we could.
Yeah, go ahead. I'm not sure I understand.
I'm pretty sure what our building inspector said was that the site work could be done over 9 months, allowing him to move into the building with the site work could be done over 9 months. We may, as a result of the existing site, I'm just saying may, require curbing and sidewalks and landscape and fencing and lighting and a whole bunch of issues we could require just as a regular normal site plan.
Right.
Not necessarily one for the future, one for the current site and current proposed use. But what Brian has said is that in order to get this gentleman's business up and running, he can give 9 months and having that site work done to come into compliance. So you have time to work with the DOT, but they get dragged their feet.
Yeah, but, okay, right. So there's 2 phases to the DOT. We have to get, as part of our review process, we have to get their input.
Yes.
Once there's agreements about where a curb cut would be and what's in the right of way and so forth, permits can come later. That can happen.
But they can't comment on a site plan that doesn't exist.
Yeah.
And
So
we don't have one.
I guess the point is there's no way around the creation of a site plan for this project.
Okay. I mean, I get the seeker part. The site plan and all these improvements to conform to NBR is not conventional in my experience for just a change of use. So basically, what you're saying is if somebody comes in, if you're in the NBR and wants to do some minor alteration of the site, you're going to make them convert the whole site to NBR, and I don't think that's the intent. If the site already exists, it's pre-existing non-conforming. So that's the part that is
Right.
really unconventional to me. But
It's the change of use that makes all the difference in this case.
Meaning what?
It triggers site plan. Yes.
Okay.
right.
So it's the fact that, is it because the building's been vacant for?
No, we're
Or
changing
company-
from a retail business to
To an auto repair, okay.
So that's, a new use requires a new site plan that meets current conditions.
Right, but I don't think that means you rebuild your entire site to meet
It
the new
doesn't,
code. That's-
a lot of it only applies to new buildings, but a lot of it applies to the landscape too. And that is regardless of whether or not you're putting up new buildings.
So I want to try to answer a question that if I understand it right, that you brought up before, which is which I think has been said a couple times, but just to be clear. So if, what we need to review it is a site plan that has the elements that are consistent with, that meet the specifications for the current NBR zoning. And, I would encourage you to work with Brian and, we can participate as needed to make sure that, because it can be a little confusing, there are elements that are only required for new construction. And so you wouldn't need to be concerned about those. But there are things that are common to all of it. So, and once we have the site plan, we can move expeditiously through its review. It will probably need, we can determine whether we have to send it back to county or not. Maybe we can avoid that. But we will need to get DOT involved, and we can do that right away. And do a public hearing, and that should be, the extent of it. Once we get through the review process, if it's approved, then you can go ahead and get your permit to begin the construction on the building, putting the new doors in, doing whatever interior work you plan to do, and whatever through the review we determine needs to get done on the site right up front. Like, you and I talked about, identifying where customer parking goes and where
Right.
cars that are currently under repair will go and that sort of thing. But after that, you have a 9-month, once you have completed that work on the building so that you're ready to actually move in, you can ask for a temporary C of O that is good for 9 months from that day forward. And, hopefully before then, the zoning will get sorted out and you'll make a decision about whether you want to do your next application.
Okay.
So that seems to be the flexibility we have, the flexibility that exists for you to be able to open your business but not necessarily have to expend all of the money to put sidewalks in and repave, et cetera, is available. But we don't have the flexibility to simply ignore the requirement for a site plan.
Right.
Okay, and
Yes, no, I agree with that.
Or even-
Site plan has to be prepared.
yeah, and I don't even, so that puts, right. and
So I guess it's just what's going to be on the site plan is really what needs to be determined, and what's only applies to new.
So the
construction.
best way, I think, to do that is offline, to meet with
Okay.
Bryant and to work through that.
Okay.
So,
All right.
And it's not just, I think, quite frankly, what will be required as a result of you being in an NBR district will be very little. But there are also other things that need to be on the site plan that generally have to be on every site plan.
right.
I think that's what you should be talking with Brian about, is what kinds of things you need simply because it's a site plan.
Right.
Yeah.
No, I get all that.
Right, I mean, you could, for example, you might ask for a waiver for topo because it's a flat lot and you're not regrading, et cetera, and that's fine. And you're aware of the special conditions for auto repair
Right.
in any allowed location.
Right.
Okay, and that's kind of it.
Okay.
So that would really be the next step. And,
We have an elevation view prepared, so
okay.
we'll submit that.
Oh, good, yeah, you said you would.
Yeah.
Great. All right. I don't see any other route through this right now.
Okay.
All right,
So I'll meet with Bryant. and
okay. I wish you-
Prepare a site plan.
okay, thanks.
Okay,
All right,
thanks.
thank you, Roddy. All right, our next application is a new application, PB 1730. This is 33 Montague View Drive. This is a single-family residence that's undergoing a variety of alterations and improvements. So if you guys want to come up. Hi, nice to see you. Did we get a revised? Oh, you're bringing those to us right now? Yeah. Perfect, thanks. You have one for everybody?
Yeah, they're 10, should.
All right. I'll take one. Thanks. So it's been modified.
Yeah, the date on this is revised.
This is the old one?
Yeah, it's worth, you can hold on to the old one for now, but I say let's check out the new one.
All right, so amidst the rustling of paper, Richard, why don't you just give us a quick summary of what's going on here?
It's a single-family residence on 33 Montague Drive. The owner is here for any questions. Is it a two-bedroom now? It's a two-bedroom. Yeah. So it remains a two-bedroom. It was built in 1989 by Rich Steffens. It's my understanding.
Yep.
Yeah, it's a modular house, which doesn't matter, but it's the attic or upper floor under the roof was never built out. There's a stair up, there's a door, it's isolated, but the plywood is in. So the proposal is that we're going to do some renovations on the house, build out the attic, do a small vestibule for energy reasons, make minor modifications in the basement, add a one-car garage with a deck above it, and a small pool off that deck. The reason we're here is because you're required to come for site plan approval if you build out an attic. The building inspector, I don't know if he's still here.
No, it's not.
Ah, too bad.
He's in the hallway.
Okay.
He's still here.
He noted that the driveway we had proposed in the drawing that was submitted extended into the setback. So I didn't want to do that, so we revised it, and our objective is just to get this moving along. We can work with you guys, whatever you want to do on that. I think that the present setbacks are 20 feet on the side yards.
Yep.
According to what I understood from the building inspector, but I don't know if you received a letter or not, but it was 12.8, and that's what's represented by the existing driveway on the site plan. So we're making the driveway a little larger to access the new garage, but it's no further over than the 12.8.
Okay.
The one thing to notice, which came up, which the inspector had no problem with, the house was sited to the view, not to the street, so it's diagonal on the site. The blue lines, the red lines are the property lines. The blue lines are today's setbacks of 50 feet in the front.
Yep.
So the existing house is 33.1 feet from the property line. So it's non-conforming. However, when you propose additions that are, 6 feet plus behind that, the building inspector has no issue with those additions. They're small. They're not further into the line. One is 6 foot, the other is.
Yep.
One more thing I noticed just reading the code, it says the definition of a lot line front, dividing line between the lot and the street. So I just put an additional dimension on of 43.6 from the street edge to the corner of the house, where it's 33.1 to the property line. That would be a building inspector, something he could comment on. I don't think it really matters, but it shows that if you're reading the code, we're actually 43.6 from the street edge, and 50 is the requirement. So, the addition is 6 feet back from that, so it's basically 49.6.
Okay.
It's almost 50 feet from the street edge. The last item was there was a question on retaining walls, and I've indicated the height is roughly 4 feet at the driveway, and that's similar to what's there now. It's stepped retainage because the grade slopes up.
Okay.
And that's it. So the crux of it is we're building out an attic. We had to come for site plan approval. We saw a few items that we made conforming to the code.
So if there's any questions or comments from the planning board, let's go through those, then we can have Brian address the driveway issue. Have you seen this latest version? So if not, why don't you take a look at that while we're going around the table? Do you have any specific comments?
And I think one thing that's important to note is when this house was built, the zoning was different.
Yes.
So its non-conformity isn't in that it was built wrong. It's that the zoning was different at the time.
Nobody would accuse you of that. You're right, it was R2, and then it was changed to R1, and the setbacks went from whatever they are for R2, 25 and 15, to, or 25 and 12 and a half, to 50 feet in the front and 20 feet on the sides. Anyway, so most of the modifications, many of the modifications are interior. There's a proposed porch for the front, a new deck to replace the one in the back, with the one-car garage below, and the pool at that level. There's some additional, so the driveway you're proposing is larger than the existing driveway? Is that?
Yes, by about 258 square feet.
Okay, that's what it says.
Yeah.
So that's the added part, okay. So, any other specific comments or questions about this? So, Brian, there was a question for you that Richard raised about the driveway and whether the current, this most recent version is now compliant. He mentioned something while you were in the hall about the 12-foot 8-inch set. I'm not clear, so I don't want to try to quote him.
So there's currently a, see the CR fund district.
Yeah.
Setback from the R1 again.
20 feet on the side.
Okay. The existing driveway is closer than that to the property line. Back when the subdivision was approved, it was an R2 district, if I remember.
Right.
And the setback was 12 and a half feet. The setback line is, the dimension for that is not listed on it. But as long as the existing driveway is not closer than 12 and a half feet, because under any circumstances, it was never allowed to be closer than 12 and a half feet
Right.
to the property line. And whatever it is right now, even if it's 19 feet away from the property line, it can't get any closer than it already is.
Okay.
Unless you're at least 20 feet away.
All right, so according to this, the existing driveway is roughly 12 feet 8 inches from the setback.
And then that line goes.
All right, so it's legal.
It's legally pre-existing non-conforming.
Right, so if they expand the driveway, but they don't move any closer to the setback line than 12 feet 8 inches.
Right now the non-conformity is they're 12 feet 8 inches away from
Okay.
the property line. As long as they don't increase that.
Right, so they're not
specific
doing that. They're
non-conformity.
increasing the amount of impervious surface, but it's not encroaching any further into the setback.
Right.
Okay, and similarly with the front porch, my understanding from your conversations with Richard are that even though that's coming into the front yard setback, it's less of an encroachment than the already existing house.
Right now, the building is 33 feet, 1 inch away from.
Yep.
33.1 inch.
33.1 foot.
Thank you.
Yep.
Away from the front property line. And
Okay.
as long as it doesn't get any closer than that,
Okay.
we're okay.
All right, so there doesn't appear to be any requirements for variances here.
Right.
Okay. And if I'm not hearing any other comments, then let's do some administrative stuff. Type 2 action under seeker, so there's no further, nothing else that we need to do under seeker. There's no, this project application's exempt from referral to the Ulster County Planning Board.
So one point of clarification on that.
Yes, sir.
I made a recommendation that it's exempt from referral under the referral exemption agreement with the planning board forged with county planning about, I guess it was 2 years ago or so.
Okay.
And that provided an exemption for residential development, given that we do site plan review on residential development.
Okay.
And however, Attorney Golden was asking me on a case, the standard is if you're not creating parking by statute. So I need to clarify with county planning that in a case where you're adding some paved area, that it is, I need to confirm that if you're reconfiguring parking but still providing 3 or less parking spaces, that is not a case where it requires referral. And I'm assuming that there's a Article 8 standard, which is essentially your parking and driveway transportation standards, that is the statute that they refer to in their exemption. I don't know if that was clear. I can try to clarify that. But I would just communicate with county planning staff to confirm that this is exempt and that my recommendation is appropriate.
All right, so we'll do that. We'll confirm with them. I'm not clear why this would ever have to go to county. It's beyond the distance from a county road or state road. It has no impact on county services.
No, it's correct. It's not. I can check the schedule to make sure that the distance schedule is for within 500 feet for the standard that I bring up.
Okay, I mean,
or
further
outside of 500 feet.
Okay.
But it really goes to the question of whether if you change bedrooms, whether that
right, but they're not increasing the number of bedrooms. So since our parking statutes are based on bedrooms, and it's the same number of bedrooms before and after. Again,
there's one bedroom or
no,
We actually took out one bedroom.
You're decreasing the number of bedrooms. Okay. All right.
Went
well,
from 3 to 2.
All right. Well,
Okay.
we'll confirm with county, but at this point, we'll just leave it as we need to confirm with it.
That's incorrect on the drawing, because I say 2-bedroom house. I just occurred to me that it's, if I do, I say single family. Okay.
All right. I'd like to move
Thanks.
on.
Yep.
If there's no change in bedrooms, then I withdraw that, because in the standard I'll read it was that it's exempt. There's an increase in parking is not required by local statute.
All right,
I'm just gonna
and there
verify.
isn't. Okay, so back to the beginning. This is a type 2 action. At this point, there's no referral to Ulster County Planning Board required. Like us to vote that whether or not this application is, we'll make a motion that the application is complete, and we'd like to set a public hearing for, do we have any public hearings coming up? So I'd like to set a public hearing for 7 p.m. on Tuesday, November the 21st, 2017. So that's a motion. Do I have a second? Second. Any discussions? All in favor? Aye. Aye. All right. We'll see you guys on the 21st. Thank you.
You want to take it?
Thank you, Renata. All right. The next application is Net Zero PB 1602. If you guys want to come up. Barry.
Greetings.
Okay. All right, so there are a few items for this evening. We got, you all have in your packets a memo from the Department of Transportation about the bike lane. And you also got a report about stormwater. So we'd like to discuss each of those, and then the other thing everybody had homework to try to come up with a punch list of some sort for what you thought were items that we needed to make sure we discussed. We don't necessarily need to have everybody list all of their items, but what we'd like to do is highlight those things, and then we'll submit all of that to Christina, we can put this list together as a single item without overlaps, and then we'll be able to work from that and help sort of set a schedule for how we're going forward on this. So the first item is the bicycle lane, and so there were, I'm sorry. Yeah, go ahead.
Did you also receive the vote from the county when they held
The
they approved
vote.
the project the other night? They
Advisory
approved the
opinion?
project the other night and they said they were going to submit back.
We,
Did you get nothing?
David,
I forwarded information that Zero Place was approved from the county, but for all of the cases that were considered at the, I guess it was last week, we don't have the written write-ups yet.
Okay.
It looks like
Yeah.
that it's been approved.
okay.
No county impact.
No county impact.
I'm assuming that's the definition of approval, right?
I don't know.
Yeah, I don't think there were any recommendations.
Okay.
No, they specifically said they have no comments other than
They
their
said to me
refusal.
that zero was approved.
Okay. All right. So no, we haven't received
Zero
any.
got zero comments.
Zero comments.
Okay. Zeros. Okay, got it. Thanks. So we'll get something in writing, but we haven't gotten that. Okay, so we had a couple of planning board members there. You guys were in attendance. You were not in attendance. Okay. And so the gist of it seems to be that the DOT has issues with putting the,
Dave, you were there.
I'm sorry, I thought you meant the county planning.
no, I met at the meeting about the bicycle lane. That's what I thought. Okay. So they've given us a bulleted list of about 8 items that they have, for 7 items they have concerns with. What was sort of the takeaway message? Are these open for discussion? Is this, or are they
They
like?
seem pretty firm. Just from the letter, you can tell that.
Okay.
Yeah, no, they were pretty firm. They came there and forced to say,
No.
we don't
They
like
said-
that.
Okay.
They said this kind of design doesn't exist anywhere in this region or even in the state. And they said they would not accept that. They think that the 6-foot shoulder is sufficient for bike travel along, well, I won't speak for you guys with that.
Okay.
And one clarifying point, I don't know if they said it's not in the state, but it's DOT does not have jurisdiction over New York City. And so while this is
Got
a
it.
type of design used in New York City, that's not DOT jurisdiction.
Okay.
So what are the alternatives?
So so
Six-foot shoulder is what they prefer.
who has final say here? Is that clear?
I think that anything in the state right of way is DOT jurisdiction.
Okay, and the bike lane would be, even if it was as
And
originally.
they talked about it, like, they talked about what they call a Class 8 bike route is
Yep.
what 32 is. And they says most of those bikers are in the traffic when there's not a shoulder, and, and they would be in the shoulder. And for them to leave that environment and then come back into it, they felt was a problem too.
Right, yeah, they mentioned that in here.
Did they mention the letter? I
Yeah,
couldn't remember that.
they do.
So they, they brought up a whole lot of issues, I forget if they hit them all on their letter, it seems to
They
me.
talked about snow removal,
Yeah.
bicycle safety. Now, I had,
Two-door zone.
I mean, maybe it's a moot point, but I had thought that the parking space, between the parking spaces and the bike lane, there would be a curb, but when I look at your plan, maybe there isn't.
There's no standard for a
because-
curb
And
for snow
that was a concern of theirs, that,
and even if there was a curb, it creates this maintenance problem,
right,
Yeah.
okay.
and they were, I guess it's all here.
Yeah,
The
no,
other-
it's,
The other thing that they talked about, and it's partially referenced in the last bullet here
Yeah.
about which I found interesting, was that she was describing, I can't remember the name of the engineer that they brought, but she said.
Lisa Mandela,
Yeah. thank
yeah.
you. She said, this was interesting, she said, 4 foot is the minimum shoulder for essentially a
Bike
bike
lanes.
passage, right, a bike lane. They said 6 feet is the optimal one, because if you go beyond 6 feet, and by the way, there's a typo at the beginning of this where it says 8 feet, and they meant 6 feet.
Yeah,
But they said when you go beyond 6 feet, it starts to appear like a lane.
And then
Cars start going in. So we have room for a 6-foot lane, which seems
Okay.
right in the sweet spot of that balance.
Any other comments from board members, or especially those who are in attendance, about whether, you know?
The state was pretty adamant about
Okay.
referring the bike lane being out on 32.
Okay.
I don't think there's any disagreement among the 4 people from the state at that meeting on that issue.
Yeah, I agree. Actually, they felt that that was the safer way because it would be only one door opening as opposed to the possibility of 2. So,
Yeah.
Yeah, they,
And that there's a place for the bicycle to go.
Yeah.
Meaning towards the traffic lane as opposed to a curb.
right.
So, right, which is where the danger lies. So, because Americans don't know how to look over their shoulder when they're opening the door, because they're not used to having cyclists.
Well, they were also concerned about them backing in.
I know,
The bikes.
They mentioned
right,
that.
well, there's no,
Did
right.
they mention that? Yeah.
So, one question I have for the board is there any interest in submitting this to Alta Planning and Design for their comments about this feedback and, you know?
And
whether-
essentially challenging DOT?
Well, that could be one of the possibilities, or they might say, yes, under the circumstances I don't want to pretend to know what they're going to say,
Yeah.
but you know, they were pretty instrumental in helping us finalize that design, and came up with a lot of reasons why it was a good idea, which is, you know, part of what our basis for doing that was. We've also gotten feedback from local cyclists, and so it's really a question of what does the board think? Should we just leave this as is and have these guys change the plans, or should we pursue this a little further with our consultant?
Michael, I even brought up at the meeting that there were 2 other properties in proximity to this that were going to come under site plan review. One being the property we just spoke with earlier.
Sure.
And the other, in fact, the town that's interested in the former Gateway property.
Right.
And, you know, if this was the future, then why not start now? And they made it pretty clear that this was not the future of bike lanes, that the future of bike lanes was a 6-foot shoulder on the side of their road.
Okay.
And they were pretty adamant about that, so.
All right, well, they can jump up and down as much as, I mean,
I'm just recording now, I'm saying,
if at the end of the day that they have absolute final say about what goes on in their right-of-way, then it's, you know, there's no point in beating this up.
Do they have final say?
Yes.
Okay.
Or I think it's kind of decided for us.
So one of perhaps my final objection to this is that they've created a discontinuity in the bike shoulder because you have to cross tributary 13, and a couple of years ago they redesigned it so there's no place for cyclists to go there except in the road. That seems to me dangerous and poorly thought out, and they don't seem to have any plans to fix that. So, I'm not necessarily talking to you.
Yeah, but I mean, the thing is that basically what you're saying is that, you know, the DOT's plans don't make sense, which it may well be true, but they still have the authority to say what is and what is not going to occur within their right-of-way.
Okay. All right.
There's a lot of evolution within the highway design manual and the complete streets movement and bike paths. As you know, there's been a lot of evolution, for example, in New York City and in the rest of New York State. So the multimodal designs, the bicycle and pedestrian designs are catching up with the design standards. They're retrofitting the design standards and learning how to adapt them for more multimodal transport. So I think you've heard a great deal of opinion that it's going to be hard to negotiate with DOT, and they sent a strong message of what they want.
Okay.
But at the same time, there is, I would say, a lot of evolution in bicycle and pedestrian type, transit-oriented as well, design.
Okay. So, So let me just ask this and just get at least a show of hands. What, should we send this to Lindsay or no? Should we, the question is, should we send this to Lindsay, yes or no?
I say no.
Do you say no? All right, well, I'm hearing mostly no's. So yes. All right, well, fair enough. Then I guess that you'll have to modify your plan.
We did already.
Wasn't the original plan?
Well, it was really going
That's
back.
the original.
Yeah.
Because when I looked at
Well,
the
there are
book, I
some-
was very confused.
Right, but to be
Because that's
fair,
how it was
there are
drawn.
some changes that we brought in from the alter recommendations, such as the pitch of the angle of the curbing's changed, a few other things that
Okay.
disinherited, right?
It's not
Yeah,
exactly
we
the
took
same.
But-
the one bump out, it's
Bump
been
out.
evolving.
Yeah.
All right.
The one at the intersection, but not the one in the middle of the site.
Yeah,
All right, but
Did
the,
you resubmit that to the board?
I did.
all right,
Yeah.
but the key
I
change.
didn't give them the large one.
Right, all right. But the key change is the bike lanes back
Yeah,
between the parking aisle and the travel lane.
that's correct.
Okay.
With 6 feet. I
6
mean, that's a
feet.
really,
Yeah, whatever.
that's a very meaningful amount of space.
Okay,
So we'll just need 3 for the files when you're done. If that's the final, we just need 3 full size.
Sure thing. Yep.
okay.
And so it just, I mean, just to reference back to the public comment, it then it also conforms with the way the handicap parking is also, is that the bike lane is outside of the parking. So it's the same kind of model.
Yep. Okay. So we also got an initial stormwater report from Hudson Land Design, the engineering firm in Beacon that we're using to review this work. And I had an email exchange with Dan Kohler at Hudson Land Design. And told him that he didn't need to be here tonight. We weren't going to have a technical discussion about it. Basically, the question for you all is, you've got it.
We have it, and it's really asking for clarification.
Yeah, that's the sense that I got.
Yeah, it's not asking for any design change or anything.
No, it's mostly issues around modeling and a couple of suggestions about maybe some changes. They're pretty
it's
small.
It's minor stuff, and I don't think we have any problem just satisfying all this.
All right. I think I did make a couple of notes that I did want to bring up.
You've had an exchange with that guy as well, right?
Yeah, the law was vague, we didn't get technical. It was just a very quick exchange.
Yeah, and as long as it's okay with you, if you want to just have them talk offline, if that
And I'll
expedites things, that's
I'll
fine.
submit, directly to him, and obviously always copy you.
Yeah, you can do that, and then he'll review that. So he had said, David, at the beginning of his report, I had asked him to also be involved in the review of the construction-related documents, and he said that he didn't receive any reports or agreements related to soil remediation. I don't know that any such thing exists. I mean, basically, I did send him the Phase 1 report, that whatever you had provided us, I gave him.
We can respond to that when we respond to him.
Yeah, but he may want to know a little more about, where you're taking the soil and all
We
that.
have information, we've had dialogue with.
Yeah, so just, if
folks
you
who
could
did
just
the
fill
work.
him in on
I think
that.
if we share that with him, he'll understand, okay, I got it.
Yes, I think so too. So, yeah, and then the only other he made a comment towards the end that caught my eye, and then I'll ask other people if they have any specific thoughts, but it's actually the very last item, in which he says, provide a cross-section that shows the building, its foundation, and its footing drains in relation to the subsurface chamber system. So I guess there was some concern about just making sure that water from your chamber system is
There's
not...
no basement in the building.
Okay,
Just that the building's a slab construction. So
okay, he probably didn't know that.
Yeah, I'm sure that's
Okay.
That'll explain it.
All right. That seems fair then, but even so, you don't want any water going under your slab either. That's, I assume, from that. Okay, are there anybody have any other questions about that report?
On item number 3, it talks about wanting, it says it appears that pre-development drainage, and it talks about having a pool. Where would that be? Where are they talking about locating that on this site?
Let me read this again. Drainage from subdivision.
And I understand it's pre-construction, but I'm just kind of curious.
I believe he's referring to the area alongside the trail, between our property and the trail. There's like it's almost like a ditch, that, drops off our property and then it rises up to the trail and then runs almost linear.
Yeah, there's a swale along
He's talking
there.
about the pipes. We have that connection to the trail on our property now, where there's a pipe underneath it, so it creates like you could call it a pool, or is that how he refers to it?
Yeah, pond with 2 discharges.
Yeah, there's one 18 northerly beneath the trail rail. Yeah, so I think the 18 inches referring to the pipe that comes under the town road that pumps into that area. And then the 12-inch discharge to the swale that runs parallel to the trail. Sure, the same swale. So what he wants us to do is basically do another analysis further downstream.
Okay.
Which really isn't that far. It's the pipe leaving the trail, as opposed to we showed everything going into the trail. Is where we ended our analysis. So he's saying take it one more step downstream.
Okay.
And do the analysis.
Okay.
So we can do that.
Okay.
Where is this report available?
Can we,
I can put it online. I'll put it online, right under the project itself, on the village website.
okay.
The engineer.
All right, so you'll communicate with him.
So for the next meeting, we will have addressed all of these things, right?
I hope so. Yeah. 2 weeks, is that the next meeting?
A little less because today's Thursday, so it'll be 2
Week and
weeks
a half,
from,
yeah.
it's 12 days from now.
Yeah. We'll try to. We're in the middle of a big project right now, but I will try to. But I don't know if that's going to give him enough time to review it all.
All right, well, you guys can work that out.
We can proceed.
Yeah, that may be asking for too much for us to put this all together and get it to him and him to review it and then get back.
All right.
I would think he would need at least a week.
Yeah, he would,
And,
because,
and I really need more time. I haven't been able to focus on this.
Yeah,
much.
that's between you guys.
Yeah.
That's fine, we don't need to do that at this table. So you guys work it out. But anyway, the process seems straightforward enough, so. Okay, so the next thing that I wanted to do was just to have the board, there are things that we need to cover and discuss as a board, and things that have to get done as we go through this process. And I had asked people to sort of come up with a list of things that they want to. We all received a copy of what our planner had put together as a list of items, and really the question is, did everybody have an opportunity to do this? What we can do is submit all of it to Christina and me. We can sort through it and then put together a single punch list of stuff that we have to consider. These will be things that we need to discuss, things that or other agencies that we need to get involved in the process and make sure they have an opportunity to review things. Or unsettled issues such as David mentioned, the recreation fee. So we have to figure out how we're going to manage that, for example, and the affordable housing units we haven't really talked about in a while. So did everybody have a chance to do something that they could provide to Christina in the next couple of days?
I will admit that I did not.
You don't have to admit it. That's why
But,
you have the next couple of days.
Yeah, thanks for the next couple of days. But I do have a question based upon a couple of things that were entered into public comment.
Yeah.
One of them dealt with that one entrance.
Yeah, it's right here.
Yeah, that circle.
Yep.
And possibly doing away with that. Thoughts on that from your side?
So, Carol Lee is correct. Tom Nyquist and I walked the path and looked at that, and they raised that. It was the first time I'd ever heard that. I took it back to the landscape architect and to the architect to discuss it. And what they told me about is they said, look, remember a few things. First, the planning board held Water Street Market as sort of the example of a commercial area engaging with the rail trail, so keep that model in mind, and keep in mind the fact that we made a number of design considerations such as the access way to the public bathrooms and certain positioning of bike racks, etc., to take advantage of that one path, so that people are not bringing their bikes around the front and around the mingling areas of the front over to the side to park and then use the restrooms. Instead, they can go straight from the rail trail. So he said, if you want these public restrooms to be something accessible from the rail trail, then you should really keep this path there, because that's the primary way that they're going to engage those public resources. That was a pretty compelling thing to me. I would like your guidance from a planning board. What do you want to see in terms of the relationship of commercial retail space, of the recreational facilitation that Zero Place will be doing, and the rail trail?
Water Street Market does not have direct access to the rail trail any more than Zero Place.
No, it has three entrances, right? It has the middle.
From the rail trail to the...
Yes. It has the ends.
Right through their facility.
It has the ends, and it has the middle where the bike racks are.
The end.
It does actually have a
Middle.
It has a it has a set of stairs directly off the rail trail right into this.
Yeah, only one.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's where that's where I always park my bike, right?
There's a bike rack, and then you're right at the fountain there.
Never used it.
Yeah, so.
I do.
Never used it.
Got your bike.
Don't have a bike.
And unlike Zero Place, which I would not encourage, right? You'll also notice that at Water Street Market, there are private entrances to certain retail facilities like Jard and the cafe and so forth that go directly to the rail trail. I'm not encouraging that. I would not add any more access points. But I'm asking you, do you agree with, how do you consider this access way, and what do you want to encourage in terms of people moving from the rail trail to Zero Place?
Where's the public bathroom?
The public restroom.
Almost in the center of the back of the building.
It's right, so here's,
That's the
sorry, it's right here, directly off this pathway.
Inside or outside?
No, right there.
Okay.
So it's an exterior
does not
door.
exist an easement
Yes.
between
Okay.
the village.
No, well, it's,
There's a physical connection.
you walk in and
Whoa, whoa, whoa.
Yeah, there's no written easement.
But the physical connection's there.
Okay, go ahead.
there is when you walk in, remember there are three restrooms. There's the gender neutral restroom and the male and female restroom, right? You go into this hallway and there.
Okay. All right, got it.
You don't access it though through, although it's possible that some retail establishments will create doors, well, certainly they would create doors into that hallway.
Right.
That's not the way you want rail trail users. You don't want them going through retail places. You'd like them to go through the public access.
Okay.
And the other thing that the landscape architect and Dave Toder mentioned is also for the residents of the general residents of Zero Place who will be exiting from the north side, that would be the most convenient way for them to access the rail trail as well, as opposed to going around front and over to Mulberry Street and
Sorry, and the wooden footbridge, is that going to stay
Yes.
also?
Yes.
So they wouldn't necessarily have to go around back, because they could go to the wooden footbridge.
They could go that way,
Through the
yes.
parking lot, yeah.
Is there a current easement for that footbridge across the village property?
The passageway exists now. It has always.
I know it exists now, but is there a legal easement for that?
I don't believe there is.
Do you mean
I think
footbridge, or do you mean the proposed?
No, the existing footbridge.
The footbridge, I think, was part of the shared parking facility, the park and ride.
Yeah, parking.
So then the village was leasing it, so
Well, the village actually wasn't, yeah, it was a complicated arrangement. The village was a pass-through, so the contract was with the property owner.
Well, I guess my question is, who has the liability for it? The village
I
or?
don't know the answer to that right now. That's a question we can get answered. So, we've done that.
Because it would be the same situation with this new one, huh?
Yes, would be. Right, you'd be crossing the village-owned
right.
property.
Yep.
So.
Yeah, I think that the footbridge itself is predominantly in the trail right away.
Yeah, I think so too.
Yeah, so that it's, you know.
Yep, oh, I see what you're
It'd
saying.
be it's similar
It's
to any
not.
connection between a retail store and a public right of way. Where does that liability end? You know, if they trip on the curb and fall into the property, you know, who gets sued, you know? It's like, you know, it's.
Well, that's for you, you got more money. But,
I thought the towns did.
So my feeling, so my general sense of this is we're investing a lot in creating a public resource here in these public restrooms, right, that have to be maintained and so forth. I would want those things to be used, right? And I would want the access to that to be facilitated, right? And if people are, so my general sense is it really worth closing one entranceway and making it more difficult for rail trail users to access that public resource?
All right, so you ask what the board
Can I
thinks.
just suggest, possibly? I mean, because on paper, this looks very reasonable and it makes sense and there's bike racks, but aren't we there tomorrow morning doing a site visit? I mean,
No.
Saturday morning?
Not there.
Not for this, well, but,
If we sort it out, we haven't.
I mean, because I think it would
confirmed
it would be nice to see in real life sort of how that trail looks and what
Yeah, I mean,
kind
we
of-
will be going back to the site to do that, so we.
So
can
I
certainly
feel
have that.
comfortable, I mean, because again, on paper, this seems the most logical to have that if the bathrooms are there, and I didn't realize there are bathrooms, and I think that's great. But yeah, I feel like seeing it will be very helpful.
Okay.
You have to realize it exists.
Right,
Connection.
that's why it would
Yeah,
help
the
to
mode
see it.
Existed, connection there.
And you will go light it, you put lighting?
I don't think we
There
have
hasn't been
lighting
any
on the trail.
proposed, it was,
When you get to the building, there's lighting around the perimeter.
Okay,
I don't think any of it cast into that right away,
all right.
at least not as of now.
But I think it's a good idea because I'm looking at it and I think, like you said, it would stop. Now, everybody has to go to Mulberry Street or go over the little wood bridge, whereas you're dispersing it, spreading it out, the traffic, whether it's walkers or bikers, and you have a bike rack there, so. And that's, like you say, that's very similar to the Water Street Market where they have the bike racks there, so. I think from that point, it's a good idea to disperse the
And the
travel.
idea of people walking their bikes continually.
all right, David, let me
Sorry,
give
go ahead.
the board a chance to talk. Other thoughts about this?
If you want to.
So, in old street designs, or in more, let's say, contemporary design, when you got cul-de-sacs and streets that weren't in grids, we found that pedestrian mobility and bicycle mobility became very challenging, like up on Bonnecue View Drive or Sunset Ridge, where these streets dead end. So on the one hand, there's the theory that when you have bicycle networks, there's lots of points of connectivity, you can move around flexibly. On the other hand, during the NBR deliberations, there has been a lot of consideration of, it seems like, managing the access to the rail trail, and in fact, not as encouraging as much porosity. I don't think that there's standards per se in the village, and guidance in the comprehensive plan, in the transportation land use plan. I don't remember that, but I haven't gone and looked at it for that topic, but I just thought I'd give you that information for thinking.
Is it within our purview to give access from private property to public property?
There are a number of things that would require, there are a number of agencies that are involved in giving approvals here for various things. The village would need to be involved, the Board of Trustees, in authorizing certain approvals for some of the stormwater and other issues around this. So we can consider these things for plans and approve them. They're conditioned on all of these other approvals coming into play. We can try to get those, ahead of time if possible. That's one of the things that we can do, is if we can identify these things, then we can be out in touch with the Department of Public Works and the fire department and the village board to, see if we can get letters back from them and whatever's necessary. So personally, I understand that there are people in the NBR conversations who felt like we should have less access and there are liability issues. I don't agree with that philosophy. I stand by the earlier version of the NBR, which is that the interconnectivity with the rail trail is something that done in a responsible way, I think, is an asset. I don't see any need for lighting this. It doesn't make any sense to me, especially since the rail trail is officially closed. There's no reason to do that, but I like this access point here. I also think what hasn't been mentioned yet is that if there are safety concerns about using Mulberry Street as a pedestrian or a cyclist, providing this alternative reduces the number of people then who are using that. And so I think it's a safer option as long as it's properly designed, so that particularly getting onto the rail trail from there is people can see both ways and so forth, so I would be in favor of keeping that.
How would people know there's a bathroom there?
It's a good question. I don't know how we'll advertise it, or if it's just learned over time.
I think it's the same way in Water Street Market. People just learn that there are public bathrooms.
Right, although Water Street Market is, well, it's true, there'll be business around, so it's that kind of thing.
I imagine some signage, I don't know, I haven't thought through that, to be honest.
But I mean, I would be reluctant to start putting signage there for the same reason I'd be reluctant to put lighting there, which is to minimize the disruption on the rail trail, the aesthetic on the rail trail. Okay. Thank you for bringing that up. The other issues that were raised at public comment, we can come back to those at our next meeting. So are there, at this point then, are we able, I heard from you, are we generally able to put together some, can you all provide something to Christina and me over the next few days? Okay, so we'll do that. We'll put together a list that is comprehensive about the stuff. We'll try to sort it out so that it makes sense. We'll have David look at it and have Brian look at it, and our attorney make sure that we didn't miss anything glaring. And then we'll distribute that, we'll give that to you guys, and then we can sort of figure out what's the best way to approach these items, tackle them.
And I think what Eve said too is good, we'll have the site, go over there and look at the site so that'll give some other thoughts that we might want to put on this checklist.
Yeah.
But that's not scheduled yet, right?
No, we'll do that. We should be able to do that. So the other thing that related to this application tonight is that we have so I just want to be clear, because you were away for a while and my life fell apart because you were. So we got approval from the neighbors that we contacted. We contacted 4 neighbors, and we just need to give them a date and time.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, it's not Saturday.
So
I have it on Saturday.
So the proposal is to do it this Saturday.
8 a.m.
Yeah, nobody's doing it at 8 a.m.
Something happened.
Can we decide on a time? Told me.
Is 10 a.m. okay?
Can we do it at either 9 or 9:30 or 10?
I'm unable to make it coaching soccer.
On Saturday. Okay.
That Saturday.
All right. Other people, you're available? What's your schedule? Anytime?
I already had it on training.
I was liking that early morning thing because I got stuff I need to do.
Could we do it at, do you guys want to do it really early? I
I think it's more up to the neighbors. They
Well,
wanna-
why
that's
don't
a
we,
good-
8
the,
seems a little early, so why don't we say 9 o'clock?
I'm a real estate broker, I get up at crack at 9:30.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
Daylight savings. So
8 in the morning, I'm working on Saturday morning.
9 o'clock?
9 o'clock. But it's a stretch.
I'll have to call you. I'll call you the night before. Okay, all right, so we'll do 9 o'clock, we'll plan to meet at the neighbors.
We send out another memo, another
Yeah.
invite, please.
That's correct.
You don't want to, while you're all out and about in the neighborhood, just wander over to Zero Place?
It's
right
gonna
after?
be a balmy 22
Well-
degrees.
Or do you want to talk about
I think that the deal is that we'd like to talk about it at the next meeting, so we
Yeah.
can set up something
20s at that hour.
very next?
right after that, yeah. So it's not gonna slow anything else down.
Okay.
All right. Okay,
We'll go.
It'll be a short meeting.
yeah, of course. I mean, that's accessible. You can, as long as you don't mind.
You're welcome anytime.
Okay.
Just the
Yeah.
planning board though, right? Not the general public.
Okay.
I've made it available to them too.
Okay, so yes, we can wander
9
over for that.
o'clock.
So 9 o'clock, we'll do that. We'll
You'll
send
tell
out,
us where we're going.
we'll send out a place and time. Okay, so I think that's it for tonight.
Guys, now that we have the planning board, the county planning board approval
Yes.
and we've addressed a whole bunch of the big issues that were discussed at the end of seeker, can we maybe start thinking about scheduling a public hearing here?
That's one of the items that is certainly on the punch list, but I would, what I want to do is gather what everybody has to say and then work with our attorney to make sure that we, can schedule that at a point in time where we can then, because that sets some clocks ticking that we need to then.
I like clocks.
Right? Right. So, I get that.
Yeah.
So,
Because my clock is ticking every day.
well, let's not get all philosophical here, but yes, I understood. So we will, all right, we'll put this together, we'll get that to you, and we'll have that. Just a little more patience, I appreciate it. All right. Okay. Thank you. So we're on to application PB 1731. This is 26 Grove Street. We saw this as a pre-application, but this is the first formal application, if you guys want to come up.
Yeah.
Nice to see you all.
Likewise. Thanks for traveling up from New Jersey.
Yeah. No problem. All right.
Glad to be here.
Okay, so Brian is still here in case we have any questions for him. All right, so you guys are in the process of purchasing this.
Correct.
And you would like to establish a current site plan that's in compliance with code.
We understood that there were some violations that were existing,
Yep.
that from the previous owner, or the current owner. And we'd like to bring it into compliance. I guess the driveway was expanded without a
Right.
permit and was built as far as impervious lot coverage. So it's basically a gravel section they added, so
Okay.
our goal would be to, we had a driveway that was designed that would meet, I believe, according to the engineer, meet your criteria. So our intention is to rake up that section of gravel that's there and put dirt and seed and
Okay. and just see that.
revegetate that.
Okay.
And inside, reconfigure it to make it more suitable and
Okay.
meet the criteria or code for that as well. And that's it. That's what we're
All right.
going to do.
Comments, questions from planning board members?
Well, the site plan, this is the only site plan we have.
That's the only one I have, yeah.
Yep, we have the survey.
Parking as in, we're not adding any bedrooms, it meets the criteria for a 4-bedroom house, and we're bringing it back to a 4-bedroom house, and all we're doing is raking up the gravel that's there. It shows the driveway that was expanded, that we intend to, is that the same one I have? Yeah, this is the driveway.
Yep.
The current driveway, and they added like gravel and whatnot in here, and our intention is to take that section out And that's it. So we don't intend to add to the driveway or change the driveway or change the bedrooms or quantity or quality or anything.
So this driveway is proposed to fit 4 cars.
This, I guess so, because it was approved already for a 4-bedroom house, so we're not adding bedrooms. It is approved in your code for 4-bedroom house. We're giving it a 4-bedroom house. So I believe it meets the code already.
I mean, it looks,
That's what I was led to believe by the engineer.
Brian, could you come up, please? Rich has a question for you about the driveway at 26 Grove.
This existing driveway is approved for 4 cars?
This one?
No, it isn't.
What's it approved
It
for?
was actually, the house is supposed to be a 4-bedroom house.
Right.
It is. And it was legally approved, so it's presumed that the amount of parking that's available for a 4-bedroom house is already existing.
Okay. All right.
It was also presumed it was supposed to be a 4-bedroom house, and it wasn't.
So that's what
I still want to have to see this gentleman eat the problem in the future, because,
So he's saying it's pre-existing non-conforming, or are you saying that it's adequate for?
there should be at least 4 parking spaces on the property to meet the current code.
in that
There
driveway.
should be, but are there?
You can stack the driveways 2 on 2.
Okay,
on
no,
residential
just yes or
driveways.
no would be fine.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just,
I mean, it certainly
I
looks like it from
understand.
the plan.
but, yeah.
The engineer thought so. The
Yeah.
engineer that drew it, she thought it was fine.
Okay.
We only need 10 by, what's it, 10 by 19?
9 by 18.
9 by 18.
9 by
size.
So you got plenty of space here.
Okay.
Just should have shown
Yeah.
car parking, that's all.
All right. So,
And the other thing is that
go ahead.
we have part of the reason why this gravel thing exists here is with a lot of our houses that are rentals. Driveways have a tendency to expand by the tenants. They have a tendency to start driving over lawn, lawn becomes dirt, dirt becomes gravel, gravel becomes more driveway. So one of the things that we were talking about was delineating this driveway, so they could not go back and use that 12.5-foot sideline setback.
Okay.
Some sort of
And
railroad
delineate.
tie or plantings going in this area.
Sure.
Yeah,
no
just,
problem.
right, something that would,
Yeah, I'd rather him not be
Discourage.
driving all over the dirt and mud and making a mess of
I was
myself.
going to say
Yeah.
that.
Well, I mean, you can imagine.
I think it's large enough. I think the driveway, as we're proposing it, bringing it back to its original state, I believe is large enough for the house anyway, so I have no problem doing a railroad tie.
Well, when the house was built, the house also had a 2-car garage.
It did. Yeah, no, I figured
Doesn't
that.
anymore. It's just, it's just, somebody's gonna be parked here at 8 o'clock in the morning who's got class. And somebody's gonna be parked behind him who comes out the night before. How's he gonna get his car out?
Isn't that typical of a lot of parking lots in
Yes,
Paltz,
it is.
it's just like it?
But that's why you wanna see some sort of delineation on the parking. Otherwise, they'll just.
I'm not opposed, I'm not opposed to it.
all right. So, let's
Say
note
every
that.
landscape.
Yeah, so,
I don't know what we'll do, but at least a
Yeah,
railroad
put
tie edge or
something-
something like that.
something that
I
would
don't know how we'll
discourage
plant it
cars
or
from
what. I
going
mean,
over it.
I do want it to look nice too,
Yeah.
but I don't, and if
Yeah.
something may happen over time, if we decide
if
to.
you do something low maintenance, like railroad
Yeah.
ties,
Exactly.
that'd be fine.
Okay with it.
All right, other thoughts about this?
this is another where.
Brian, are you okay with the ground level, which proposes to have 2 bedrooms and a study room? Yeah, it's the same drawings. It's-
At least I'm being consistent. But I screwed up
I
because
just
We
wanted
changed that.
I thought the other one had it.
It was there.
I put it there, I
We made that not a bedroom,
Right.
under your, suggestion, which I thought was a viable suggestion.
Are you,
We moved such things all around. and-
are you satisfied, so I'm asking Brian, are you satisfied with that as it's shown, that it won't be a bedroom?
Well, the study room can obviously be used as a bedroom, and according to our local zoning law, it is a bedroom. Any room that can be a bedroom is a bedroom.
Okay.
What would you have to do to not make it a bedroom?
Or, not just remove the door, I mean, typically happens is people take away their doors as soon as we get done with our inspection, they put the door back on its hinges again. Or go and get one of those ready hung doors from Home Depot and slap it up in about 15 minutes.
Well, I mean, we had an application earlier this year in which there was a question about improvements on a third floor, and you had them do certain things so that a room that you felt comfortable made it, as far as you were concerned, not a bedroom, and you didn't count it as a bedroom.
Yeah,
It was like a
because
den.
the opening to the room was not of a convenient size, he's already hung door from
Okay.
one of the box suites.
All right.
So if you remove this section of wall here,
That would
and there's no closet in that room, so.
That would make it definitely a study and not a bedroom.
Okay.
Because it doesn't afford the privacy that a bedroom requires.
Right.
The only thing I had with it was, we rented to kids before, and a lot of times it's nice for them to be able to
Right.
have a place to study, to actually study.
Right.
And even my daughter's going to NYU, and
Yeah.
when she went to college and regular college, they rented a house, and a lot of times these kids are on totally different schedules. And where 3 kids are partying and don't have class tomorrow, my daughter's studying to be a doctor, and she's got to study.
Right.
She had to leave the house and go to Starbucks to study because she couldn't study.
Right, so having a study room is a good idea.
Can't they just study in their own bedroom?
Well, if there's 2 people in the bedroom, maybe not. But all we're saying is that
yeah.
if there's a way to do it, I mean, obviously it could become a de facto bedroom in lots of ways. But all we're saying is, would you please work with the building inspector to ensure that he's comfortable with the floor plan so that this room isn't counted as a bedroom. If it is, it's going to impact your parking, and it's going to force us to
I agree,
change the survey.
100%. And I think the square footage of the lot, there's many reasons as to why.
Yeah, and I think you can have this
I'll
quiet
work with
space that you're talking about.
I'll work with him to come up with
All
the
right.
floor plan that he thinks
Okay.
is viable.
That's all. Yeah, I think you can achieve your goal in the house to have a place for people to go without, but you'll need to work with him on that.
Agreed.
Okay. Any other thoughts or questions about this application? Okay.
They're in receipt of David Gilmore's comments?
I'm not sure I am.
They may not be because, again, I was handling the duties of Christina and I did not do that.
Way to go, Michael.
Now they are.
Just saying.
Did I just get served? That's how it happened.
Okay. There are a few things on here that you'll need to add. Rich Steffens, what's your knowledge about item 3, this intermittent stream?
Yeah, there's a very active artesian well in the east side of this property.
Okay.
It creates this intermittent stream. Water's constant, comes right about the ground there.
Okay.
We buried we put in a catch basin and brought it over to the other side of Rose Street in a pipe underground.
Okay.
So it does not really surface anywhere near this house that I'm aware of. You can imagine anybody would have dug it up.
Okay.
There's also a catch basin, I don't think it's shown on your site, but you do have a catch basin at the end of the driveway.
Kind of in the middle of the driveway, isn't it? Like, it's at the edge of the
It's that area
driveway.
we're talking about.
It's at the edge of the driveway, yeah. It's at the edge, middle edge.
At one point, not too long ago, they had to cut that up and see the blacktop is.
So are you aware of any hydrological features that they?
I don't think they have a problem as long as that pipe is working. It shouldn't be.
Okay, well, this is really just to have on the site plan is the question. So
What's it
these-
looking for?
So he's looking for 3 items on the site plan. The approximate locations of your utility lines,
Okay.
which would be good to have. The 12.5-yard side setback.
Okay.
And
So you just want that noted, right? And I believe.
Yeah.
You really should have that catch basin and drainage
So put those on the plan?
on the plan.
Okay.
The catch basins, I guess, is on it, but it's not noted as on it?
It's not labeled on it.
It's not labeled,
It's a
so we
little
just
square.
change the labeling on it as catch basin, right?
Yeah.
And you want us to show the 12.5 feet side yard setback between,
Yeah, between the parking area and the
Between
edge of the
Jacobs
property.
on your south side there,
yep,
that 12.5 feet from their property line to your driveway has to be green.
Excuse me?
Has to be green, it has to be
It
planted.
can't, it
Gotcha.
can't be, right, it can't
Understood.
be impervious.
So we'll, yeah, so I think we're gonna meet that, no problem, we just have to list it that way.
Right.
Okay,
So you
and
can
then,
just, so you can just have a dotted line that shows.
yeah, I'll send this back to the engineer
Yeah,
and give them the criteria you're looking for.
Right.
And have them just add it to the plan.
All right, well, if there, so the question about number 3 is if there aren't specific streams or things that need to be identified, then you don't need to do that.
Yeah, I think the only thing I've seen that looks like anything is the catch basin, I think that leads
All
to
right,
other
so
stuff.
label that.
Just label, I agree.
All right, then there's some minor things you need to add to the EAF.
Okay.
And so David is asked, so the seeker will address that.
So I said it was type 2 for seeker, and you said you'll address that.
Yep.
I expected it needed referral, sort of the same reasoning that I wasn't articulate on the
Yeah, but
33
I
Bonnecue.
don't think it does.
Was that there needs to be parking spaces, but I hear Bryant saying that there are 4 bedrooms, so that there's no
Right.
increase in bedrooms with
Right.
this site plan, so there's not a need to increase the
Okay,
parking.
so we don't need to send this. And then the last item which you've raised for other applications is whether there's any interest in having you guys take a look at your sewer connection. At this point, we're an MS4 community and we're trying to address whatever we can in terms of sewer lines that might be aging and in need of repair.
So you want us to camera the sewer line?
If that's possible.
I'll do it.
Okay, that's great.
I understand what you're asking, and I understand why.
Excellent. That'd be great. Thanks.
No problem.
Wonderful. All right. So with all of that, then, I'd like to note that this is a type 2 action under seeker, that we do not need to refer this to the Ulster County Planning Board. I'd like to make a motion that the application is complete, and do you think you can have a final plan back to us in
That's what I was just gonna ask you, when do you want it by, I'll get it.
Can you have it in like a week or so?
Excuse me?
A week?
1 week. Yep,
Okay.
I'll have it done.
All right, then I'd like to
I don't-
set...
The camera work won't be done. by
That's
then,
fine, that's not
because-
required.
But the site plan,
Yeah, just something-
improvements will be on there, not a problem.
All right,
Take care of it.
then I'd like to set a public hearing for 7:10 PM on Tuesday, November 21st, 2017.
Am I at that?
Should be.
Is that what you're asking? So 7:10 when?
It would be Tuesday, November 21st.
So moved.
Second.
Any more discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, so Christina, you guys can be in touch about what you need to do for the public hearing?
7:10 PM, right?
Yeah, 7:10, we have one at 7,
November 21st.
so,
And I can bring that, or do you need it forwarded to you first?
need what?
The site plan stuff?
Ahead of time, because that needs to go in everybody's packet. So we need that by
Next week.
Thursday, the 16th?
Thursday, 16th?
Yeah.
The paperwork will be to you.
Yep.
Okay.
All right,
And we'll see you on the 21st.
perfect. Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Thanks for all your help, everybody.
Yep.
Appreciate everything.
All right. All right, next application up is PB 1715. This is 12 Main Street, Black Box Theater proposal. Hi, how are you?
Good. Just sitting in behalf of Harry and
Okay, great.
whatever means could be helpful for overall decision.
Excellent. All right.
Ben Williams. Oh, Ben Williams.
Hi, Ben. All right, so, I think this was John, give that to him, he found it in my stuff. Is that you? Okay. All right, so, we have a resolution that was worked on over the last period of whatever, days or weeks, and that was sent to you all, I think yesterday, and I apologize for not getting it done sooner. It was also sent to the applicant, who through Richard, and it was, we then received today a letter with comments from them. We've also received, I think, when was our last meeting?
October 17th, right?
Color copies.
Oh, okay.
You have it already?
Yeah, I'm okay. I
They
have
all
it, I have it
green
electronic.
text, so it's on the pages.
I'm good. So we have I think we dealt with the signage and lighting at the last meeting. But we also, in the packet for this meeting, we received a letter from a law firm, Timko and Moses, and that was forwarded to our attorney, who has provided comments for us as well. Okay, so I think what I'd like to do is go through the resolution. Richard, you were asked to provide some information for one of the items under submittals, right? You had a signage and lighting plan that did not indicate a new revision date, and you were going to provide that. Did you do that?
I do not have it with me, but as part
Okay,
of
so
the
you could send that
submission,
along.
we could provide whatever you need.
We just need to know what the new date is.
Yes.
So that we can put it on here.
Well, there's
And-
still another issue with respect to that, and that's that on the revised signage plan, as far as the square footage involved, they did take off the additional sign, but they are not considering the square footage of the directional signs in their
Right.
total.
So Brian can address that.
Right.
Well, I think the note states that we will keep it at 30 square feet and provide whatever is needed.
Okay, so
But
you want to address?
yeah, but I don't know what that means. Is that you?
That means
is
whatever
that-
you guys need, we'll do it within your 30 square feet, unless there's a way around that to add square footage.
So there are generally two totals when it comes to signs. One is the commercial signs, and the other is for the accessory signs. They're totaled separately, but they have to have the same total overall. So 30 square feet is space for the commercial signs, 30 square feet maximum for accessory signs.
And
We have two commercial signs on the property that you're proposing.
Yes.
One freestanding sign out by Main Street.
Yes.
And the other one on the wall facing the front, over the front door.
Right.
And then you have at least two accessory signs, as I recall. One over by the residential parking spaces, and then one at the end of the driveway on Works, leading to those residential parking spaces, warning people that that's not an entrance to the theater and to go around the other one.
Right.
Is there a third one?
Well, there's
Not
also
this-
directional signs, right?
Directional sign, according to our zoning definitions, I can recall, has to be off-site and it instructs people to the location of a business that's not readily apparent on the main road.
There's nothing.
So wait, are you saying that is this third category, or that falls under the second grouping?
Directional signs would be considered a commercial sign and would take away from the total allowable square footage for the sign that would be out by Main Street and on the building itself over the front doors. The accessory signs don't take away from the directional square feet.
But we don't have any directional signs on this plan.
Right, these are going to be accessory signs.
We have, right.
Okay.
Okay.
Can I just ask, I mean, this may be a ridiculous question, but is there any flexibility to that, given the fact that those signs were put in as a benefit? You know, that I understand they're commercial signs as they're commercial signs, but the other signs are serving to help out in a situation because parking has to be located in these diverse areas, and we don't want them people walking through people's houses. And so, is
There are options.
flexibility?
The village board can approve what are called community poles, which would provide information for consumers who are traveling up and down Main Street and other main roads to become aware of businesses, say, on Church Street that you normally wouldn't be aware of just passing through the community.
Okay, so that's
one of the
another
ways
option.
we can handle that. Directional signs are, for all intents and purposes, make billboards.
But if I understand what Brian described, there's two categories distinct from each other in terms of total square footage, each of which allow 30 feet.
Yes, in this
And it
case.
would seem unlikely that you would have 30 feet, 30 square feet of accessory signage, so that doesn't seem to be an issue. And you're committing to having less than 30 square feet of commercial signage.
I think the plan actually shows 30 square feet.
Within the two
Right.
signs. So-
Yeah, there's 30 square
Done.
feet of commercial signage, and, yeah, no, it seems to be done.
Yeah.
Good.
So,
We'll provide whatever
okay,
building inspector needs.
all right. So, then as, for an administrative point of view, we need to have,
I'm sorry, so you're saying it's 30 plus 30?
Yes.
Not
Yeah.
combined to be 30?
No, 30.
no, each category is allowed 30 square
Okay,
feet.
that wasn't clear.
Okay. So this plan will need to be updated, and then that'll get recorded
Yes.
in the resolution. So that's what we need to do. Okay, let's get to the other issues. Yep.
Can we discuss the ADA issue, and Rick, I appreciate you writing on this, that one of the letters from the other attorney and from Greg Burton deal with, just so I can understand better what the logic is behind that and whether that's the correct logic or not. I mean, from what this particular individual was telling me or was trying to explain to me is that the theater depends upon the parking lot or the parking of Water Street Market and has an agreement to use that parking. So if the theater is then going to be ADA compliant in their parking, that Water Street Market would have to be ADA compliant in their parking. And if they are not ADA compliant in their parking at Water Street Market, therefore the theater is not ADA compliant in their parking. Take it away.
I think that's,
John, if I ask another question before mine. ADA parking requirements, are they based on the amount of square footage in commercial buildings? Number of spots is that?
They're based on the
So
number.
if we add the theater, does the Water Street Market have to add more ADA handicap spots?
We added a spot in front of the theater.
Hold on.
Yeah.
Let me-
Oh, sorry.
Parking requirements are based on the number of parking spaces that are available in the parking lot.
Okay.
Based on the number of spaces in the parking lot or the square footage of the commercial buildings that are there?
I don't recall off the top of my head whether or not it's based on the occupant load of the building. I am certain that it is at least based on the amount of parking spaces in a parking lot.
Right, so if you have X number of spaces, you need so many, there's a
Yes.
formula for a certain number of spaces requires then a certain number of, at least so many have to be handicapped.
That's right.
Okay, all right.
I think, John, what you stated, the way that you stated it is a little bit of an overstatement, in the sense that the only thing that's required for this application is that the Water Street Market has sufficient ADA compliance for this application, not that the entire parking lot has to be ADA compliant.
Right.
Okay, so that if this application needs X number of spaces, including X number of ADA spaces, if those are provided in a way that arguably they're for the theater, it would be up to Brian to look at that and determine that, but then it would be fine for this project. It does not trigger something where now that entire, for your purposes, on a planning board issue and site plan of making sure that that this project is ADA compliant. It's just that there's enough for this project's ADA compliance in that lot.
Okay.
Michael, I know you were suggesting we could get into the resolution.
Yep.
But it sounds like what's being discussed now is so commingled with number 13.
Sure.
I think we might as well, I could suggest we might as well hear from Rick. You know, we're all in receipt of the memo, that was in response to the memo. Maybe we could hear from Rick exactly the basic, you know, what we are and are not permitted to consider based on what was raised in the memo from the attorneys, Lenco,
Sure.
et cetera, and the response from your firm.
Okay.
I really want to make sure I understand it.
So do you want to ask a specific question?
My specific question is, what, if any, are the prohibitions against a potential approval here if, in fact, what's been listed in the two memos is true?
This board, as with many other governmental approvals and compliances, building code is another issue. ADA is very close in a sense to building code issues, all right? When you approve a plan, you can say, you know, if something is readily apparent that it is deficient in, say, ADA compliance, then you ought to address it. For instance, the number of handicap parking spots. If Brian tells you need so many, then you should be making sure that it has that many on available to it. But this board is not the enforcing board for the building code nor for ADA compliance. And so any kind of condition that simply defers that to Bryant and says that Bryant must determine that the parking is ADA compliant, I think would satisfy this planning board's role, right? So that could be a condition that in fact Bryant has to determine, just like he determines whether or not something is compliant with the building code, state building code, he can determine whether or not this project is compliant with the ADA as far as access and parking, unless there's something that is blatantly obvious that you should address immediately. Otherwise, you can condition it saying this approval is conditioned, the certificate of occupancy is conditioned upon Bryant's review that in fact it is compliant with the ADA.
So my question is not necessarily with the ADA, which I think I heard the answer to John's, but my question is with regard to the compliance of the entire parking facility that is being relied upon for approval of this application for the 12 spots that this application requires.
Right. Well, there's certainly, you know that there is more than 12 spots in that Water Street market.
I understand.
Okay.
Volume is not the question. It's the compliance that's been raised in the two memos that I need to understand very better.
Yeah, and as far as I'm concerned, there literally is more than 12 spots. You have also done analyses that at the last meeting it indicated that at least the majority of the board, I believe, felt that there was enough parking given the information that was before you to satisfy the parking requirements of the theater. And all that's required is that if some application is saying we're going to use somebody else's property and that other property is subject to a site plan, all that has to be determined, and this also can be done by Bryant, is that it's determined that the demands from this property are consistent with the site plan of, in this case, the adjacent property. Right? And if it is, then there's no need for that other property to come in for any site plan amendment because it's consistent with it. That doesn't mean that it doesn't trigger, similar to the ADA, it doesn't trigger the need for an entire site plan amendment simply because there's an analysis as to whether or not there's one issue. And if in fact there is a deficiency, and I'm not saying that there is, but if there were a deficiency found by Brian, say, of the adjacent lot and the site plan, then if they were to come in, they would only be addressing that deficiency. They would not be addressing the overall site plan, not be addressing whether or not there are other problems with their site plan, whether or not they were or were not compliant. If in fact the deficiency was that they failed to have the 12th parking lot of a sufficient width, space of a sufficient width, then either the applicant can go ahead and just make that width and therefore obviate the need to come in for an amendment, or if it required an amendment, it would only be with respect to that one parking spot. I mean, it's an extreme example, but, so that there's nothing triggering, simply because you're using somebody else's property, coming in for a site plan amendment unless it's determined by someone. In this case, I think it makes sense that it be Bryant, come in and say, it's not consistent with that site plan. Not that that other site plan is or is not being followed. It's only with respect to whether or not that site plan can accommodate